Good afternoon. My name is Miriam Coffey and I'm joined here by my colleague James Cross. We're both workforce supply leads across the East of England in the NHS. Today we're going to be talking about your personal brand and networking, but first of all I'm just going to talk to you about our Future Ready webinar series, which has been designed to support you as newly qualifying healthcare learners to transition confidently into employment. There are 6 webinars in total and they are all recorded and will be stored on the East of England Multi-Professional Healthcare Learner app. If you haven't already accessed this, there will be an opportunity to download the app via QR code at the end of this webinar. There's really useful tools and electronic copies of all of our presentations will be stored on the app. It contains loads of useful information and support for you, so please do access it. So, in terms of the purpose of this session, we hope by the end of this session you'll be able to describe yourself confidently for NHS applications and interviews, communicate your strengths as a student or a newly qualified professional, use networking safely and professionally to support job opportunities and to support your future career development, and consider your talent agility. So you don't need to sell yourself, you just need to explain who you are and what it is that you bring to any role. James, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Miriam. And hello, everyone. So I'm going to start with personal branding, first of all, and consider what actually is personal branding, and I guess with a particular focus on all of you as healthcare learners. So personal branding essentially is around what others think of you and is made up of your values, behaviours, motivators, achievements and skills. It's also about how others understand who you are as a future professional. And I guess very much linked to that, how you yourself would describe your skills, values and learning from the placements that you've had, the course that you've done, or a whole host of other experiences as well. And why it's so critical is actually personal branding, I would make the argument, is actually something that really should be a golden thread. And when you are applying for jobs, when you're undertaking interviews, when you're completing your CV, doing your LinkedIn profile, and we're going to talk much more about that, actually your personal branding in terms of what you're good at, what motivates you, what your values are, skills, etc., etc., that golden thread should come across in all of those things that are mentioned there whenever you're thinking about applying for a job. And again, what I think is so important to remember with anything like this, no one is ever perfect in relation to this, but it is about being really clear, professional and authentic, particularly around supporting all of you with the journey that you're just about to take in terms of entering that jobs market. Next slide, please, Mary. So, first of all, and actually, if you don't mind, Miriam, I'm going to use you as a bit of a guinea pig in just a few moments, just to rewind back the clock just a few years, just to think when you finished your training. So this question, just for the benefit of people listening, is around using 3 words essentially to describe your professional self, and really thinking about what those words would be. And there are 3 prompts here, which I'm, as I say, going to ask Miriam just as an example. But what I would strongly suggest you all do is while we're talking, at any point, please feel free to pause the recording and reflect on, and indeed answer, all of those questions with respect to yourself. Maybe write it in a journal or on a bit of paper, because this will help you in terms of developing that brand. So, Miriam, I'm going to ask you these 3 questions. So, when you finish your training, what kind of practitioner did you want to be?
I wanted to be somebody who was seen as being very reliable, James. If I said I was going to do something, I did it. It was part of how I demonstrated integrity and trustworthiness.
Absolutely. If I was a you're gonna have to really use your imagination now. If I was a patient on the ward, or let's say, I don't know, a husband, you know, wife's just having a baby, and you were there
Mhm.
in the midwifery suite, as it were, in the birth suite. How might I have described you if you'd have helped us deliver our first baby?
I would have hoped that you would consider me as being very empathetic and compassionate, James.
Very
I
much
have
so.
always tried, thank you. I've always tried to be very kind to any patient or carer I've come into contact with. And I hope now that I'm working within kind of management in the NHS, that I also demonstrate that as a kind of a competency throughout my working life, being kind and compassionate.
And I think that's so important, Miriam, because actually we reflected in the last webinar, didn't we, around kind of working as a team.
Mm.
And all of us have to work in teams. And I completely agree with you. Being kind and compassionate, which you absolutely are, is a critical part of being a good team player. So absolutely, I think that's such an important point to highlight. And then final question, and I think this is such an important question actually. Um, what matters to you when you're providing care?
And for me, it's being about patient focused. It's making sure that my patient or my customer, if you like, is right at the center of everything I do. They're at the center of my decision making. They're just at the center of any plans that I make, and they are the focus of my day.
Thank you very much. And as I say, just as a reminder, folks, feel free to pause the recording at any point and just reflect on those three questions there from your own perspective. Really, really important. Okay, thanks, Miriam. So moving on to my final slide, again, really just trying to develop with you all this concept of having that personal brand and really trying to develop this and support you with it. So or a personal branding or personal branding involves defining your value, really thinking about how that's communicated, particularly at a strategic level, telling a story, again, an absolutely critical part of that. What is it about you that makes you unique? What is it about you when you are applying for roles? And of course, that could be on an application form or indeed in an interview. What is it about you that's going to appeal to that employer to make that hiring decision? Um, Thinking about your online presence professionally, but also just moving across onto the left-hand side in terms of that social presence as well. Online presence is absolutely critical. And I have to say, certainly when I am recruiting, if I'm completely
Mm.
honest, and invariably, you know, we do, of course, look people up and everything else. Normally, it will bring you to people's LinkedIn profile during the process. So again, it's so important, and we will talk about this much more in this presentation, but having a really good up-to-date LinkedIn profile, online professional presence, but also as well in terms of social media, being really clear about
Mm.
what you are posting, but also what you shouldn't be posting as well. And I think we can all make our own judgments around what is appropriate and maybe what is not. And I always think, without going too far into this, I always think with anything like this, we always used to speak about the so-called kind of acid test, as it were. Would you share what you're posting or what you're sharing online with your mother, with your colleagues, with a group of, you know, very close friends? And I think normally by asking yourself those set of questions, it's a really good guide about around what you should and shouldn't be posting. And then the final point about having that a really good personal brand is being authentic. And you've rightly alluded to this already, Miriam. Just being authentic, there's no point inventing it, because actually
Mm.
it will come across in an application process, or indeed particularly an interview, if you are trying to be something you're not. So really try and think about what are your strengths, what are your motivations, and being authentic to yourself. And then why this is so important, and we've started to allude to some of this, but let's bring it out a little bit more. This will really help you, or I guarantee you, stand out to recruiters. Invariably, when we're recruiting, we have got, well, certainly tens, you know, probably
Mm.
more, often forms to go through. They'll all come through on NHS jobs, and you've got to make sure you as an individual are standing out, and this is where the personal brand comes into play. Again, obviously, you've got your sort of academic history and your student history, which is absolutely fantastic, and you will share many of those experiences, I'm sure, throughout the application processes in terms of jobs that you're applying for. But crucially, it will help interviewers really understand you beyond those grades that you've got. So, so important. It can also for yourself as well. And I think basically anyone that says interviews aren't, they're not nervous going into interviews is frankly lying. It is a white lie. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But everybody, no matter how many interviews they've had, is nervous, and because it's a very alien situation to us all, and often you may be interviewed by someone whatever it might be. So having that personal brand will give you that confidence when you are talking about yourself during that interview process. And then finally, and again, I think this is a really important point to draw out, it creates that smoother transition from being a student into practice. If you know what your strengths are, whether it's, I don't know, being a team player, and you've got some really good examples of that when you were on placement, for example, well, clearly that is something that is going to be so applicable when you're going into your sort of first major role, because you're going to be able to draw on those experiences in terms of what your strengths are, what works really well for you in terms of that placement environment, and be able to apply those to the environment that you're going into. Miriam, back to you.
Thank you. So just building upon that personal branding, there is a pyramid, if you like, in terms of how do we do this and how do we think about it. The first then is really thinking about your achievements or accomplishments. So what are they? What is the tangible means of delivering on your skills, qualities, experience, and differentiators? Think about reviewing your CV and think of your key professional and personal accomplishments. This is, if you like, the basis of your personal brand. Then we started to think about the hard skills. So the hard skills that you have learned as a consequence of your training or other career pathways that you might have had before you came into healthcare. So these are your functional skills, for example, things like data analysis. Then we move to our softer skills, also known as interpersonal ones, and they may be things like communications. Then we need to think about our interests and our motivations. What are they? What are our personal interests, even outside of work? What are our motivations and passions inside work? What is it that actually energizes you and makes you get up in the morning? Again, these are all things that contribute to making you you and helping stand out in terms of a personal brand. Our differentiators are those that make us different to other people within our field or situation. So really thinking about our interests, our skills, our qualities, but also how our experiences have shaped us and differed us from other people. Then we think about our personality. So the human characteristics that make you you, and they are things that are reflected upon our choice of words, our actions. Think about how other people might describe you. Maybe even what your writing style is. What's your personal style? And then we think about the actual brand essence. This is the compelling core proposition that delivers upon what you say and what you do in both your professional and your personal life. This is really completed after you've kind of thought about the rest of the pyramid items. And it's really helpful if you discuss actually with others who know you well. What is it that my personal brand says about me? So this part really is to help you think about a very short personal statement. And your personal statement is something that should reflect where you are now, not where you're going to be in 10 years' time. Recruiters do not expect that. So, for example, you could say, I'm a final year nursing student with placement experience across acute and community settings. I've developed strong communication, prioritisation and teamwork skills, and I'm really committed to delivering safe, person-centred care aligned with the NHS values. I am reflective and keen to learn and motivated to continuing developing my clinical confidence as a newly qualified practitioner. So as we've gone through those things, we've set out who we are, where we are, what it is that we're committed to and motivated by, and where we want to be in the future. 3 really important steps in terms of a personal brand and a personal statement. So in terms of networking then in person, this really means having a well-crafted message about who you are. And this is what we call a tell me about yourself response, almost like an elevator pitch that you should be able to do within 30 to 45 seconds and do it pretty much reflexively, as in it should just come quite quickly. This is kind of an opening question as well that you might have in an interview in the next few months, but also lots of interactions that you're going to have with people. So, for example, thinking about your profession, your stage of training, one placement experience or learning experience that you're really proud of, and trying to link this to your values, and then thinking about your first role, showing people your ambition and your potential. So, James, I'm going to pick on you now. You picked on me earlier. I want you to think about these 3 questions. So, James, tell me about your profession and your stage of training.
Good question. So I would say, in a nutshell, I am a workforce professional. And I guess underpinning that, I've undertaken a series of qualifications kind of whilst I've been working at postgraduate level. And in addition to that, I think we've alluded to the fact that we're always learning. So at the moment, an area that I'm really interested in and that I'm undergoing further training in is around the use of coaching and mentoring, particularly coaching, in terms of supporting individuals to be able to essentially answer the right questions to support them in their career journey and whatever particular kind of blockages they may have.
Excellent, James. So very quickly there, within 45 seconds, James has told me who he is, what his profession is, the fact he's studying at a postgraduate level. He's told me that he's proud of what he's doing, but also that he's wanting to help other people to succeed and to contribute to the NHS, which very much aligns with the NHS values about everyone counts and supporting our people. So brilliant elevator pitch. Thank you very much, James. Back to you now.
Lovely, thank you, Miriam. So we've touched on briefly earlier in one of the slides around LinkedIn, and I think colleagues will be aware, but just to be absolutely clear, LinkedIn very much is seen as the professional sort of networking element of, I guess, social media. And I think it would be fair to say that the vast majority of people working within the NHS and beyond typically will have a LinkedIn profile. I don't know how many subscribers there are in the United Kingdom, but there are many millions. There are many people on there. So for you all, it probably is really important to really think about, if you've not got one already, developing a LinkedIn profile to give you that, essentially, as the slide says there, professional landing page to manage that personal brand that you've got. And again, as we alluded to earlier, don't underestimate how often people that you perhaps meet, or maybe people that are just about to meet with you, nip onto LinkedIn, look you up, see what your career history is, see what your sort of academic history is, to really understand kind of, I suppose, ultimately who you are as an individual, and actually maybe a little bit about what your personal brand is as an individual as well. So LinkedIn is really important. I think there are some kind of golden rules with LinkedIn, which are probably very neatly encapsulated by the sort of penultimate line on the slide, really. It is that personal storyboard, and therefore, what I would say to anyone who is using LinkedIn as a professional tool, just make sure, within reason, obviously, that your profile is complete and up to date, and of course is representative of you. And it's probably not a bad idea as well. You don't need to be exhaustive around this necessarily, but it's probably not a bad idea just to nip on to LinkedIn, maybe like a few things that pop up in your feed, go on occasionally, link in with new people, perhaps with colleagues that you're working closely with. But of course, it could be other colleagues that maybe you would like to work more closely with in the future. It's a really, really good networking tool. And as I say, the vast majority of people, I would say, are on LinkedIn and do have a profile. And what we've tried to do is just to support you with this, we've just highlighted a couple of resources which we're not going to sort of share with you kind of during the presentation now, but we have popped in hyperlinks for, so you can link into these slides at your own leisure. We'll obviously make sure the slides are shared with you, and please, in your own time, just go on and access these links. They're very simple, very straightforward, but it just will support you with developing that LinkedIn profile. Next slide, please, Mary. And then in terms of key strategies to use when networking, and to really think about particularly things like interviews as well, it is never a bad idea to really think about examples that you've got, and I'm sure you've all got a number of examples for whatever it might be. But to really think about structuring these using something called the STAR acronym. There's an acronym for everything, isn't there? But the STAR acronym stands for situation, task, actions, and result. And quite simply, I suppose if I use myself as an example, how I would use this, let's say if I'm particularly applying for a job or if I'm in an interview, I would think of an example, and I would very, very quickly describe what the situation was and what the task was. And then I would spend probably more time highlighting on an application form or indeed at an interview around what actions I took and the results that I got. And notice I very deliberately there focused on the I, because we do need to be fairly frank about this. In any kind of application process or indeed in an interview process, you are only going to get marks and recognition for what you have done as individuals. So dare I say it, even though you're all good team players, you are going to need to be slightly selfish in this situation and put your best foot forward, as it were, and really think about the actions that you took and the results that you got, and really put the emphasis on those. And that is such a useful tool to use, as I say, in any applications process or indeed any personal brand type process that we are talking about. Just linking all of that up as well, and I suppose this links in to sort of the wider conversations around LinkedIn and wider networking. Networking, of course, is a two-way street, and of course it is about what you can offer other people as well as what they can offer you as well. So again, alluded to the point earlier there as well, on LinkedIn, it's worthwhile just nipping on there occasionally, connecting with different people, liking posts that have been made, maybe even posting yourself as well. It is always that two-way street. And similarly there, you may have come across something that you might think, actually, this is going to be really helpful for people. It's an incredibly useful resource. Why don't you post that on LinkedIn, just as an example? And again, showing curiosity as well, I think, is an important point to raise, because, of course, networking isn't just about digital tools such as LinkedIn. It's also about any working environment that you are working in or looking to go into. So showing wider curiosity about services and wider teams. Is there any bits of work that you might be able to get involved in if appropriate? So showing that curiosity is key. And then whether it's kind of online, but whether it's kind of in person as well, often it's a good idea to have a bit of a follow up with people just to highlight to them how helpful you found making the connection. And if you promised to share something with them, follow up with that resource or information, whatever it might be. Or it could be that you've offered to put them in touch with somebody else. So always do that follow up, because that can really show you go the extra mile. And when you are looking to maybe get something in the future from that networking relationship, if you followed up as you said you would, often that will make the follow up that you need much easier, and clearly people are more likely to follow through with that. Now, Miriam, I can't remember whether the next slide is me or you. Is it me or you? Can't remember.
I don't mind doing it now, James.
I'm going to hand back to you, Miriam.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. So this is really what next then for you after this webinar. I would really encourage you to think about joining our other Future Ready workshops. For example, the next in the series, the third one, is about exploring opportunities and job searching, really helping you to think about NHS jobs, track, but also jobs outside of the NHS as well. Really think about drafting that short personal statement we talked about, reflecting where you are now, but also where you want to be. Think about connecting with one placement contact. As James said, the last slide, think about that professional curiosity. Being nice and courteous and polite will get you a long way, but also so will being curious. It's a fantastic sign of intelligence. Ask questions. Think about attending One Trust Open Day as well, and have conversations with people kind of outside of your sphere of practice. On the right hand side, you can see some kind of common myths that people are really worried about when they're thinking about personal branding. The first one is I don't have enough experience. Categorically, you do. You've got placement experience that absolutely counts, but also life experience. People don't want to show off. James was talking there earlier about using the STAR acronym during interviews and applications, but making sure that you are focusing on what you did. So this is not about showing off. You're explaining, you're not boasting. And then the last one, I feel like an imposter. That's expected. We all did. And to a certain extent, we all still do. That's absolutely fine. Nerves are okay, but actually you're going to get through that by every experience that you have throughout healthcare. Don't feel like an imposter. Things will get better. I think, James, we're back to, no, it's me again. So this is really thinking about a tailored personal brand. Everything that we have been talking about, but it should be tailored to the roles that you're applying for. Don't think your personal brand necessarily has to say the same for every job that you're applying for. It's really worth considering the following points and incorporating this into your approach. So how can you add value to this particular employer that you're applying to? Think about what their challenges are that they're currently facing, and actually, can you as an individual or as a team player help to solve those challenges? Really importantly, think about what are their organisational values. They're absolutely often available on the website. Think about your personal values and how they interact with the organisational ones, and also the NHS values as well. And then think about how do you incorporate these into your everyday life? How do you make those values a reality? This is really a theme running across all of the Future Ready webinars. So please do book on to the upcoming webinars available through the Healthcare Learner app. In terms of further useful resources, we've just highlighted some here, and we'll make sure that these are separated within the Healthcare Learner app under career preparation. So really thinking about your personal brand pyramid and writing out your personal brand. creating the elevator pitch, so that 30 to 45 second who you are, where you're going pitch that is really useful for kind of networking situations. Creating a personal strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat profile as well, and then thinking about that great LinkedIn profile that James was referring us to. How do you make yourself stand out to recruiters? Checking out our other webinars, as I've already discussed. So Future Ready Workshop 3, exploring opportunities in job searching, and then really thinking about searching outside of the healthcare kind of arena. So that might be social care, job searching with Indeed. So that's the 14th of May and the 11th of June. However, if you're watching this in a pre-recorded webinar, then these links will also be available within the career preparation tile on the Healthcare Learner app. So if you're not available to join us at the time, please do join us later. James, can I ask you to do this slide?
You can indeed. Thank you, Miriam. And I think it just in summary, with a lot of the content that we've described today, I think if we could just sort of take a few moments to reflect on this as recruiters, and I know you've obviously recruited recently, Miriam, as I have, and I have to say it never ceases to amaze me, if I'm honest, just how many sort of application forms essentially where they're really not essentially adopting kind of any of the points that we've described here, unfortunately. And it just means that, again, unfortunately, we can't further them through the application process. So they could well be the most fantastic candidate, but unless almost we've got the evidence and they've kind of harnessed the advice that's available here, they just won't progress to those future stages. So please, folks, just definitely take some time to consider this advice and really develop that personal brand. So to start to close then, I think many colleagues on the call will be very familiar with the Healthcare Learner app, but what has been created here is essentially the QR codes. Whether you're an Apple user or an Android user, you can access the app from obviously the applicable app store, and then there's also a promotional YouTube video as well, and there is a kind of short registration process if you're not registered already. And then final slide, please, Miriam. Thank you. So we've also done as well, just on the theme of QR codes, a Microsoft form just to gather any feedback or comments that you have all got around this webinar, good and bad. We welcome all comments, so please do let us know your thoughts. And then in addition, on the slide there, we've also included the various ways that you can get in contact with us, including, we do practice what we preach, our LinkedIn profile as well. So please do follow us on LinkedIn. Just to say thank you all so much for your time. We really hope this webinar has been helpful. And Miriam, I'm going to hand back to you for the final word, if that's okay.
My final words are the same as yours, James. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you at Future Ready webinars soon. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.